The distant clatter of hooves against dry earth was the only warning that trouble was coming to the dusty town of Redemption Creek, Arizona, in the summer of 1878. Winifred Nelson had been sweeping the boardwalk outside her failing seamstress shop when the sound reached her ears, causing her to pause and shield her eyes against the harsh sunlight. A lone rider approached through the heat haze, his silhouette growing more defined with each passing moment. Exhaustion seemed to emanate from both man and beast as they trudged toward the town's only saloon. Winifred resumed her sweeping, determined to finish before the afternoon heat became unbearable. At 22, she had already endured more hardship than most women twice her age. Orphaned at 16 and left to fend for herself, she had traveled west with dreams of a new beginning, only to find that the frontier held its own unique challenges for a woman alone. The rider dismounted outside the saloon, tying his horse to the hitching post before disappearing inside. Something about his weathered appearance and the careful way he moved, as if conserving energy, had caught her attention. But Winifred had learned long ago that curiosity about strangers rarely led to anything good, especially in a place like Redemption Creek. Later that afternoon, as Winifred was locking up her shop for the day, she heard shouting from across the street. A commotion had broken out at the saloon, and several men spilled out onto the boardwalk, fists flying. The stranger from earlier was among them, outnumbered 3-1. Despite the odds, he moved with surprising agility, dodging blows and landing his own with precision. Winifred knew she should walk away, head back to her small room above the shop, and mind her own business. But something kept her rooted to the spot, watching the uneven fight unfold. When one of the men pulled a knife, she gasped aloud. The stranger knocked the knife away with a swift kick, but another man caught him from behind, and the third delivered a punishing blow to his midsection. As he doubled over, the 3 men closed in. "That's enough." Winifred surprised herself by shouting. She rushed forward, her broom still in hand. "Sheriff Morgan will be back from his rounds any minute. You want to explain this to him." The men hesitated, glaring at her. "This ain't your business, Miss Nelson," one of them growled. "It is when you're disturbing the peace right outside my shop," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Now clear off before the sheriff comes." After a tense moment, the 3 men spat curses and backed away, disappearing down an alley. Winifred approached the stranger cautiously. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, and he was breathing heavily. "Are you all right?" she asked. He straightened up, wincing slightly. "I've had worse." His voice was deep but soft, with an accent she couldn't quite place. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, assessed her with curiosity. "Thank you for the assistance, madam, though it wasn't necessary." "It looked necessary from where I was standing," she replied. "You're bleeding." He touched his forehead and examined the blood on his fingers with mild interest. "So I am." He offered her a slight smile. "Yates Nelson, madam." "No relation, I presume?" He nodded toward the sign above her shop that read Nelson Seamstress and Repairs. "Winifred Nelson," she replied, surprised. "And no relation that I know of. You should clean that cut." "I will, once I find somewhere to stay for the night." He glanced around the small town. "Is there a hotel nearby?" "The boarding house at the end of the street. Mrs. Patterson runs it." Winifred hesitated, then added, "But she doesn't take kindly to trouble, and you seem to have found it rather quickly." Yates chuckled, a warm sound that somehow eased the tension in Winifred's shoulders. "I wasn't looking for it. Those men took exception to my winning a few hands of poker." "Fair games?" she asked pointedly. His eyes flashed with something amusement or offense, she couldn't tell. "Always." "I don't need to cheat to win at cards, Miss Nelson." "Well, Mr. Nelson, you might want to clean yourself up before you call on Mrs. Patterson." She gestured to her shop. "I have some water and a clean cloth inside." He studied her for a moment, as if trying to determine her motivations. "I'd appreciate that." Inside her shop, Winifred filled a basin with water from the pitcher she kept for customers and found a clean cloth. Yates sat on the stool she offered, removing his hat to reveal dark hair with streaks of chestnut that caught the late afternoon light filtering through the windows. "What brings you to Redemption Creek, Mr. Nelson?" she asked, handing him the cloth. "Just passing through," he replied, dabbing at the cut. "Heading north to Montana Territory. Heard there's good ranching land available." "A rancher, then?" She busied herself straightening spools of thread to avoid staring at him. "Hoping to be." "I worked cattle drives for years, saved every penny." He winced as he cleaned the wound. "Time to put down roots." Winifred nodded, understanding the desire for stability. "Redemption Creek isn't much, but it's growing. The railroad's supposed to reach us by next year." "That'll change things," he commented. "Always does. For the better, I hope, business has been." She trailed off, unwilling to share her struggles with a stranger. "Slow," he finished for her, glancing around the tidy but sparsely stocked shop. "You could say that." She took the cloth from him and rinsed it in the basin, noting the bruise forming on his knuckles. Not many people in these parts care for fancy stitching or mending that lasts. They make do or buy new when they can afford it. Yates examined a delicate embroidered handkerchief displayed on her counter. "This is fine work." "Thank you." She couldn't help the pride that crept into her voice. "My mother taught me. She was a seamstress for some of Philadelphia's finest families." "What brought you west from Philadelphia?" he asked. Winifred stiffened. "Dreams, I suppose, same as everyone else." Her tone made it clear the topic was closed. He nodded, respecting her boundary. "Well, I should find that boarding house before dark. What do I owe you for the water and kindness?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "Consider it a welcome to Redemption Creek." He stood, placing his hat back on his head and adjusting it with practiced ease. "I'm obliged, Miss Nelson." At the door, he paused. "If you have any mending that needs doing, I'll be around for a few days. My clothes could use some attention after months on the trail." She recognized the offer for what it was, a chance to earn a few dollars. "Bring them by tomorrow. I open at 8. After he left, Winifred realized she'd been holding her breath. There was something about Yates Nelson that unsettled her, though not in an unpleasant way. He carried himself with quiet confidence, and those eyes seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. She shook her head, dismissing the foolish thoughts. He was just passing through, after all, and she had more important concerns like figuring out how to make next month's rent. The next morning, Yates returned with a bundle of clothes that needed mending. As she examined the worn fabric, he leaned against her counter. "You do good work here," he commented, looking around. "This town's lucky to have a skilled seamstress." Winifred gave a bitter laugh before she could stop herself. "Tell that to the townspeople. Most think I'm wasting my time with this shop. They say a woman alone can't run a business out here." She threaded her needle with practiced efficiency. "They called me useless when I first arrived, said I'd be gone within a month." Something flickered in Yates's eyes, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. "Then you're useful to my soul," he said quietly. She looked up sharply, needle poised in midair. "I beg your pardon." A slow smile spread across his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Anyone who perseveres when others say they can't, that's the kind of spirit that gives hope to the rest of us. Makes us believe we can succeed too." Heat crept into Winifred's cheeks. "You have a peculiar way with words, Mr. Nelson." "Comes from spending too much time with only cattle and stars for company," he replied. "Makes a man philosophical." Despite herself, Winifred smiled. "Well, your clothes will be ready by tomorrow afternoon." That is, if you're still in town. I'll be here, he assured her. Found some work helping old man Weber repair his corral. Figured I might as well earn a few dollars while I wait for a reply to my land inquiry. After he left, Winifred found herself humming as she worked, something she hadn't done in months. She told herself it was simply the relief of having paying work, not the prospect of seeing Yates Nelson again. That evening, as she was walking home with a basket of groceries, she heard the unmistakable sounds of another altercation in the alley beside the general store. Peering around the corner, she saw Yates confronting the same three men from the saloon. This time, they had him cornered. "You should have moved on, stranger," one of them sneered. "Nobody cheats Frank Hollister and stays in town to tell about it." "I didn't cheat," Yates replied calmly, though Winifred could see the tension in his stance. "You lost fair and square." "Well, we're about to settle that score permanently," Frank growled, pulling a pistol from his belt. Winifred's heart raced. Without thinking, she stepped into the alley. "Mr. Hollister," she called out, "Sheriff Morgan is looking for you, something about stolen cattle." It was a bluff, but it worked. Frank and his companions whirled around, momentarily distracted. Yates seized the opportunity, disarming Frank with a swift move and knocking him to the ground. The other two men backed away, suddenly less eager for a fight now that their advantage was gone. "This ain't over," Frank spat as he scrambled to his feet. "Not by a long shot." After they'd slunk away, Yates turned to Winifred with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "That was either very brave or very foolish, Miss Nelson." "Perhaps a bit of both," she admitted, her voice shakier than she would have liked. "Those men are trouble. Frank Hollister's father owns half the valley, and they think that gives them the right to do whatever they please." Yates picked up her fallen basket and handed it to her. "Allow me to walk you home. It's the least I can do after you've saved me twice now." "I doubt I saved you," she said. "You seem capable of handling yourself. Even so, I appreciate the assistance." He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. As they walked through the deepening twilight, Winifred became acutely aware of his solid presence beside her, the warmth of his arm beneath her hand. It had been a long time since anyone had shown her such courtesy. "How long have you been in Redemption Creek?" he asked. "Almost 2 years now," she replied. "Came west with a wagon train thinking I'd go all the way to California, but when we passed through here, something about this place." She trailed off, embarrassed by her sentimentality. "Spoke to you," he suggested. She nodded. "Foolish, I know. There are bigger towns with more opportunities, especially for someone with my skills." "Not foolish at all. Sometimes a place just feels right." They reached the staircase that led to her rooms above the shop. Winifred released his arm and turned to face him. "Thank you for the escort, Mr. Nelson." "Yates, please," he said. "And it was my pleasure, Miss Nelson." "Winifred," she replied, surprising herself. "Or Winnie, if you prefer. Most people do." "Winnie, then." His smile in the fading light did strange things to her heartbeat. "Good night." She watched him walk away, wondering why a perfect stranger had shown her more kindness in one day than most of the townspeople had in 2 years. The next few days fell into an unexpected pattern. Yates would stop by her shop in the morning before heading to whatever odd job he'd found for the day. Sometimes he brought coffee from the hotel dining room, sometimes fresh bread from the bakery. They would talk as Winifred worked, conversations that ranged from books they'd read to places they'd seen. She learned he'd grown up in Virginia, lost his parents in the war, and headed west as soon as he was old enough to make his own way. He'd been a cowhand, a gold prospector briefly without success, and even a stage coach guard for a time. His dream of owning his own ranch had sustained him through years of hard work and saving. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Philadelphia, her father's death from pneumonia when she was 12, and her mother's struggle to support them with her sewing. When cholera swept through their neighborhood 4 years later, Winifred had been left entirely alone. With nothing to keep her in the east, she had joined a wagon train heading west, hoping to find a place where her skills would be valued and her past wouldn't matter. "And did you?" Yates asked one morning as he sat watching her embroider a fine tablecloth commissioned by the banker's wife. "Find what you were looking for?" Winifred's hand stilled. "Not entirely," she admitted. "The work is steady enough to keep a roof over my head, but—" She sighed. "The women here look at me with suspicion because I'm unmarried and independent. The men see me as either an oddity or a conquest. No one sees me as just Winnie." "I see you," Yates said simply. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the space between them. Winifred was the first to look away, flustered by the intensity of his gaze. "You've been in town nearly a week now," she said, changing the subject. "Any word on that land in Montana?" A shadow crossed his face. "Not the news I was hoping for. Someone else claimed the parcel I had my eye on." "I'm sorry," she said, genuinely disappointed for him. "What will you do now?" he shrugged. "Keep looking. There's land to be had all over the territories if a man's willing to work for it." He stood up. "Speaking of which, I should get to the livery. Promised to help shoe some horses today." As he reached the door, Winifred called after him. "There's a social at the church tomorrow evening, dancing and such." She focused intently on her stitching, avoiding his eyes. "If you're not busy, that is." She could hear the smile in his voice. "I'd be honored to escort you if that's what you're asking." "It is," she replied, finally looking up. "Then I'll call for you at 7. With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Winifred wondering what had possessed her to issue such an invitation. The social was the first time many of Redemption Creek's residents saw Winifred Nelson in anything other than her work clothes. The blue dress she wore was one of her own creations, made during the long, lonely evenings when the shop was closed. The fabric had been expensive, ordered specially from Denver, but she had justified it as an investment, a sample of her finest work. When Yates arrived to escort her, the appreciation in his eyes made the expense worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said simply. The church hall was decorated with paper lanterns and wildflowers. A small band played in the corner, and tables laden with food lined one wall. As they entered, Winifred was acutely aware of the curious glances and whispered comments. She rarely attended social gatherings, and never with a gentleman escort. Yates seemed oblivious to the attention, guiding her through the crowd with a hand at the small of her back. His presence beside her gave Winifred a confidence she rarely felt in these situations. When he asked her to dance, she accepted without hesitation. "I should warn you," she said as they moved onto the floor, "I'm not very practiced at this." "Neither am I," he admitted. "We can fumble through together." And fumble they did at first. But as the music continued, they found a rhythm together, moving with increasing ease around the floor. Winifred couldn't remember the last time she had laughed so freely or felt so light on her feet. When the band struck up a slower tune, Yates drew her closer. "Is this all right?" he asked, his hand warm against her waist. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They swayed together, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. Winifred was so caught up in the moment that she didn't notice Frank Hollister watching them from the edge of the dance floor, his eyes narrowed with malice. After the dance, Yates went to fetch them punch. While she waited, Mrs. Patterson, the boarding house proprietor, approached. "That's a lovely dress, Winnie," the older woman said. "Your own work?" "Yes, thank you," Winifred replied, surprised by the compliment. "You've been spending quite a bit of time with Mr. Nelson." It wasn't quite a question. "He's been kind enough to bring me business," Winifred said carefully. Mrs. Patterson lowered her voice. I don't mean to pry, dear, but do you know anything about him? He's charming, certainly, but rather mysterious about his past. Before Winifred could respond, Yates returned with their drinks. Mrs. Patterson offered a polite smile and moved away. What was that about? He asked. Just town curiosity, Winifred replied lightly, though she couldn't help wondering if there was something to the older woman's concerns. Yates had shared stories of his travels, but there were gaps in his history, periods he glossed over. As the evening progressed, Winifred pushed aside her doubts, allowing herself to enjoy the rare pleasure of being the center of someone's attention. When they finally left the social, the night air was cool and crisp, the sky ablaze with stars. May I walk you home? Yates asked, offering his arm once more. Yes, please, she replied, taking it. They strolled slowly through the quiet streets, neither seeming in a hurry to end the evening. When they reached her shop, Winifred hesitated, then invited him up to her small parlor for coffee. Her rooms were modest but neat, with handmade curtains and cushions adding touches of color to the otherwise simple furnishings. While she prepared the coffee, Yates examined the sketches she had pinned to one-wall, designs for dresses and suits far more elaborate than anything the people of Redemption Creek would ever wear. These are remarkable, he said. You have a real gift. She handed him a cup. Dreams, mostly. No one here would commission such things. Then perhaps you're in the wrong place. Perhaps, she agreed. But moving takes money and starting over yet again. She shook her head. I'm tired of beginning anew. They sat together on her small sofa, talking as the hours slipped away. When Yates finally rose to leave, it was well past midnight. Thank you for a wonderful evening, he said, standing at her door. It's been a long time since I enjoyed myself so thoroughly. For me as well, she admitted. He reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch sent a shiver through her. Winnie, whatever he intended to say was interrupted by shouts from outside. They rushed to the window to see an orange glow illuminating the night sky. Fire. It's coming from the livery, Yates said, already moving toward the door. I have to go. I'm coming with you, Winifred insisted, grabbing her shawl. The entire town seemed to be awake now, men forming bucket brigades while women helped evacuate nearby buildings. The livery stable was fully engulfed, flames leaping high into the night sky. The panicked whinnies of trapped horses cut through the chaos. Yates immediately joined the men attempting to rescue the animals. Winifred headed toward a group of women organizing blankets and water for those fighting the fire. As she passed an alleyway, a hand shot out, grabbing her arm and pulling her into the shadows. Let go of me, she demanded, struggling against the iron grip. Your cowboy friend should have left town when he had the chance. Frank Hollister's voice slurred in her ear, reeking of whiskey. Now he's going to lose more than a poker game. Realization dawned on Winifred. You started the fire, she gasped. Frank's laugh confirmed her suspicion. Accidents happen. His grip tightened painfully. You should be more careful about the company you keep, Miss Nelson. A woman alone in this town needs friends, not enemies. Let her go, Hollister. Yates's voice cut through the darkness, cold and dangerous. Frank spun around, dragging Winifred with him. Well, look who survived the fire. Shame about those horses, though. I said let her go. Yates stepped closer, his face illuminated by the distant flames. This is between you and me. It became about her when she decided to side with you, Frank sneered. But I'm willing to settle this now. He shoved Winifred aside and drew his pistol. Unless you're not man enough to face me. No. Winifred cried, but Yates held up a hand to stop her. I don't want to kill you, Hollister, he said calmly, but I will defend myself if necessary. Frank laughed. Big words for a man without a gun. Who says I don't have one? In one fluid motion, Yates drew a pistol from beneath his coat. For a tense moment, the two men faced each other in the alley, the crackling of the nearby fire the only sound. Then Frank's finger twitched toward his trigger. Yates fired first, his bullet striking Frank's shoulder. The younger man crumpled to the ground, his unfired pistol clattering beside him. Sheriff Morgan arrived moments later, drawn by the gunshot. After listening to both Winifred's and Yates's accounts, and with several witnesses confirming that Frank had been boasting about teaching that stranger a lesson earlier in the evening, the sheriff arrested Frank for arson and attempted murder. As the doctor tended to Frank's wound, Sheriff Morgan pulled Yates aside. "You handled that better than most would have," he said. "Could have killed him, but you didn't." "Killing's not something I take lightly," Yates replied, his eyes meeting the sheriff steadily. Something passed between the two men, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. The sheriff nodded. "This town could use men like you, Nelson, men who know when to use restraint." After the sheriff led Frank away and the fire was finally extinguished, Yates walked Winifred back to her rooms. In the pale light of dawn, they both looked exhausted, clothes smudged with ash and smoke. "Are you all right?" he asked, examining her arm where Frank had gripped her. "I'm fine," she assured him, though bruises were already forming. "What about you?" "Nothing a bath and some sleep won't cure." He hesitated. "Winnie, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart sank. Here it was the revelation that would confirm Mrs. Patterson's suspicions. Perhaps he was married or wanted for some crime back east. She steeled herself for disappointment. "I haven't been entirely forthcoming about my past," he began. "Before I came west, I was a lawman in Virginia. After the war, things were complicated. I made enemies, some of whom would still like to find me." "Is that why you move around so much?" she asked. He nodded. "Partly. But it's also true that I want land of my own, somewhere to build something lasting." He took her hands in his. "I've been running for a long time, Winnie. Tonight made me realize I'm tired of running." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to stay in Redemption Creek if you'd give me a reason to." Winifred's breath caught in her throat. "Yates, we've only known each other a week. And in that week, you've shown me more kindness and courage than most people I've known my entire life." His blue eyes held hers. "I'm not proposing marriage, not yet, but I am asking for a chance to see if what I feel for you might grow into something permanent." "And what do you feel?" she whispered. "That you're the most useful person I've ever met," he said with a smile. "Useful to this town, whether they know it or not. Useful to those horses that might have died tonight if you hadn't distracted Frank, and most definitely useful to my soul, which was getting mighty tired of wandering." Tears stung Winifred's eyes. "No one's ever seen me that way before. Then everyone else has been blind." He leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a kiss so gentle it broke her heart and mended it all at once. When they parted, Winifred knew with certainty that her life had changed irrevocably. "Stay," she said simply. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." In the weeks that followed, Yates made good on his word. He found permanent work at the ranch outside town, proving himself capable and reliable. Sheriff Morgan, impressed by his handling of the Frank Hollister situation, occasionally asked for his assistance with more difficult cases. The two men developed a mutual respect that eventually led to Yates being appointed deputy, when Morgan's previous assistant moved on. With a steady income and position in the community, Yates courted Winifred properly, though there was little doubt in anyone's mind that they were destined for each other. Their courtship became the talk of Redemption Creek, a romantic tale that softened even the most critical tongues. Business at Winifred's shop improved as well. Whether out of genuine need or simple curiosity about the woman who had captured the handsome deputy's heart, more customers began appearing at her door. Her reputation for quality work spread to neighboring towns, bringing orders for special occasion garments that challenged her skills and fulfilled her creative aspirations. When Yates finally proposed 6 months later, presenting her with a modest ring he'd saved for, Winifred accepted without hesitation. They were married in the same church where they had danced that first night, surrounded by people who had gone from doubters to supporters. After the wedding, Yates surprised her with the deed to a small plot of land just outside town, not the grand ranch he had once dreamed of, but enough to build a home and perhaps raise a few horses. It represented something neither of them had dared hope for: permanence, security, a place to belong. "I thought we might build the house with an extra room," he told her as they stood on their land, surveying the future. "For your sewing. Somewhere with good light where you can create those designs I saw on your wall." Winifred leaned against him, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "And what about your dreams? Montana and cattle, dreams change," he said, his arm tightening around her. "I wanted land and a purpose. I found both here, along with something I wasn't even looking for." "What's that?" "Home," he said simply. "Not just a place, but a feeling." "You're home to me, Winnie." She turned in his arms to face him. "They called me useless when I arrived here," she reminded him. His smile was tender as he brushed a kiss against her forehead. "And I'll spend the rest of my life showing you just how useful you are to this town, to our future children, and most of all to my soul." As the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Winifred Nelson, once alone and doubting her place in the world, stood secure in the knowledge that she had finally found where she belonged. Not in a place, as she had always thought, but in the heart of a man who saw her true worth when no one else had bothered to look. Together, they would build their home in Redemption Creek, a testament to the unexpected ways in which broken paths can lead to the most perfect destinations.